and I just want to welcome everybody to this month's meeting. A lot has changed since our last meeting. We have a new and different president, and so I thought it would be appropriate for us to just take a minute to take a deep breath. And I am very pleased to see all the rest of you here because I'm going to consider you climate optimists along with me. And I would like to set the tone for this meeting by reading a little quote called "A climate optimist mantra could be, we can create a better future through informed optimism, resilience, and collective action, focusing on solutions and celebrating progress, not just fear." So it's great to meet with you guys because you're all part of the collective action, and having community during these challenging times is terrific. And that sounded like a really formal way to begin this meeting, which really doesn't have a very official agenda. We had three things that I just put in the chat. What have other towns done to build local interest in clean energy projects? Like, how do you reach a broad population of residents? And then a discussion of experiences with affordable battery storage, strategies to encourage adoption of a warrant article, and a discussion of energy bills. So we could start from the top. What have other towns done to build local interest in clean energy projects and try to, get beyond, people like me always showing up at your event?
The only other thing we could do, Mary Beth, because this is such a small group, we
Mhm.
could have those prompts in mind, but we could just go around.
Oh, absolutely.
Folks can respond to them if they wish, but they can also just sort of share what's on your mind right now, questions you've got about the current moment, things that are hitting in your space that the
Yeah,
rest of us might have thoughts on or shared experience in.
yeah,
I think that would be okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Hi,
our,
I'm Catherine
Hey,
in
Catherine.
Sunapee, and I am on our town's energy aggregation committee. And tonight we are having a drop-in session at the Lake Sunapee Protective Association to answer people's questions before the community power warrant article goes to the vote on March 11th. We are an SB2 town, so people will have already had a deliberative session at which no one asked any questions. So it moved to the ballot very quickly. And this will be our second drop-in session. Um, I am curious because of the change in the rates. We are in a town with Eversource and the New Hampshire Co-op, and our plan really will apply to Eversource customers. So I'd be curious if anyone else on the call is in the same spot where we are at and how they are addressing the rate increase. Um, or the adjustment of rates that is putting the coalition prices higher than Eversource's default. And also, I'm really curious. I guess I am hoping to hear more about a bill that would address a PUC action that allows the utilities to recoup supply losses. Uh, and I can't remember the bill number, um, but all these topics really interest me. So. And as for, we started as an ad hoc committee last February with no existing energy committee working in town. And we just started talking about solar, and then solar led to community power. And, we would meet monthly. So we just kept meeting and talking to people. And I don't know if our committee will eventually become an energy committee. That is in discussion. So,
Catherine, I don't know if
Well,
my answer
Catherine,
is going to be helpful. Go ahead.
this is Doug. So hello, and it's been great working with the Sunapee Energy Committee and seeing it really come alive. You have such an active group at this point. You have lots of participation in your meetings, and you're trying to move forward on several fronts. So that's it's all great to see. the legislation that you were asking about is called SB 760, and we are monitoring that. My understanding from our policy team is that some of the key folks in the committee that needs to move that forward have endorsed it, so that the prospects are optimistic that it will at least get out of committee and then for a full vote. And if that's any indication, then it would also move on towards passage. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I agree that's another one that I've been actually asking about myself, just because four towns like yours and Cornish that are up for vote in Sullivan County this year and Langdon as well. That's a good thing to kind of know where if this policy situation is going to be rectified. So if we hear anything more, we'll certainly uh, be posting that in our policy updates. I don't know if others on the team heard anything more, but that's
That's
what
a
I
great
know.
update. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah.
So it has not had even a hearing yet.
I don't know that for a fact whether it has or it has not. I know that uh, I believe it may have at this point because things are active in Concord right now. So
I
it wouldn't
don't think
surprise
so.
me
I'm
if it
checking our
hasn't.
tracker right now, and it's not one of the bills that's listed as having had a hearing or having had
Not
next
yet.
step. So I think you're right about that.
I guess the question I have, and I don't know if anyone tonight will show up, but I know I individually am very interested in how we can support it at this point. Or is the best you just have to wait until see if it ha it, will it have to have a hearing, or does
All bills have to have a hearing. So yes, it will have a hearing. And if you're interested in this, I know from speaking with the CPC&H team weeks ago that this is a very big priority for them. And you as prospective, and current CPC&H members can go right to them and make sure that they know that you want to know, and you can bet that they're going to be shouting to their members about what would be helpful. So I would go directly to them to ask for how you can help them.
thank
But
you.
otherwise, comment about our impression of what's going on outside of that public hearing process that is looking favorable, uh, is is good context for you.
So, Catherine, my town of Sandwich, we've been looking at community power, and we still got it on the shelf because last year we were trying to do a large solar array that was voted down by the town, and we want to have some wins. And because of the price, we're also Eversource and New Hampshire Electric Co-op in our town, and we don't want to have another big controversy. So we've kind of set that aside. But I do hope your committee becomes an energy committee because we were just talking, the selectmen agree with us. We're a subcommittee of the select board. And the work that we're doing, our town being volunteer run basically would never have had the time to do the projects that we're doing on their own. They've already got more than they can handle on their plate. And so what we've done, since the large solar array that would have taken care of all the town buildings was voted down, uh, one of the biggest reasons was that we would have to get a loan for that. So now we're going to each building and trying to pass solar arrays or alternative energy at each of the buildings individually. But the thing that we had the most support for was we did energy audits on 4 of our town buildings, and Eversource pays 100%. New Hampshire Electric Co-op, unfortunately, only 50% of those audits. But we got a ton of information and we've shared that with the town. So we kind of feel like we have a win there. And the selectmen have already started on it, even though it's not town meeting. There is money in building improvements funds that can be used for it. So it doesn't have to come out of an energy fund. Um, and our committee was talking the other day. We've got a great committee, 3 engineers. One of them has done audits as a part of her career. So it's just fascinating to work with all of these people. Our committee's made up of 7. And we really feel like in this climate, it gets so frustrating to work on the state level and the national level that we're actually getting a lot of stuff done and saving a lot of energy with each step that we take. And it's just a very rewarding way to fight against this administration that's kind of made us all feel a little bit down. Maybe not everybody, but those that are on our committee. And we actually have one person that voted against our larger solar array who is now on the committee, and he's all gung-ho. He loves this audit stuff, and he's doing more work than any of us. So we've brought him under our wing, and he's really feeling like he's making a difference too. We're also going to be doing a fund for energy products. So the selectmen, unfortunately, are only putting $15,000 in, but it's the first year that we'll have that fund. So they were all behind us on that. So it is their warrant. As a subcommittee, we're not doing the warrant. The selectmen are doing it. So we've got a vote for that and a vote for a solar array at our transfer station. So we have 2 warrant articles coming up in March.
Congratulations.
Such a great update, Catherine. It's really nice to hear from you and hear what you've been able to move forward. Just congratulations.
Yeah, we had hoped to bring a solar proposal for our wastewater treatment plant, but we ended up hitting it. It came together too late in the year to really be well considered by the town authorities, and so that has. Unfortunately, now the uncertainty as it relates to funding is a real challenge. So I won't say it's a downer, but it just throws such a monkey wrench into things. So, in December, we were just sort of ready to say, well, we'll continue this year for this project. But I love the encouragement I'm hearing from Sandwich. So
I could say a little bit about what's going on in Londonderry, if that'd be of interest. So we have what we call a utility committee, and it has subcommittees that address water, solid waste, and energy, which is the subcommittee that I serve on. We also are in the middle of an aggregation effort. We took the other path. Instead of working with CPCNH, we went with Colonial Power, who was a commercial aggregator. We also decided not to pull the trigger on that program in the February rate, not because it is necessarily more. It wasn't, the offer wasn't more than what we would have been gotten under the aggregation, but it wasn't much more, and we wanted to have a very clear advantage to demonstrate to the voters that this aggregation stuff really made sense. So that's kind of where we stand. We've been looking for places to put a solar array. One option, we have not been real successful. So we also were looking at individual town buildings. And I'd love to hear from Catherine T. The analysis that you went through to compare the aggregated cost of solar for all the buildings versus having to pay for the solar on each one.
Well, it definitely is going to cost more to do it on each building, and that was the reason that we did a large solar array. We kind of looked at Plymouth, who has a solar array off-site, so none of it is behind the meter, and that was our biggest barrier to the voters. was that, geez, first you've got to put it onto the grid, and we're only getting, I think it's about, 75%. So that the voters just, had enough folks that didn't like that. They wanted it behind the meter. And we tried to explain that it was significant difference in the cost to split it all up between different buildings. But that's what they voted for. So that's what we're doing. And now that we're doing that, we haven't heard one peep so far. And I think we, knock on wood, that we won't hear any peeps. It seems I talked to one of the biggest anti-town solar array folks, and he is now behind it. But we've done a lot of community work. We didn't alienate those folks. We continued to talk with them and encourage them to share their concerns, and we made some changes. The folks that were supporting the array before still wanted the big array, but they are still willing to pay a little bit more to do each building. So it depends on your makeup of your town, really.
Yeah. So that gets a little bit into the question I had put on the list about what do you do to get people to turn out to your informational meetings, community meetings about clean energy? Because it sounds like you got some opponents to come. Was that just because it was such a high dollar item that taxpayers
Yes.
were worried?
Yes. Yeah. And this
Yeah,
year, the planning board is doing solar zoning, and now this certain group is all over that. So we've we've got a break. They're leaving us alone, and they're all over the planning board. So they had huge turnout for the public hearing, and now
Huh.
it's all over the, sandwich bulletin board, internet bulletin board, the anti folks. So they've got their hands full. Whether that'll pass or not, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. I guess
What?
ours haven't been controversial enough to get people to turn out, but it's just been disheartening. We have certain kinds of sessions over really the last more than 5 years, and it's always the same people who are basically pro green energy who come. Um, and it would, we would just like to get better representation. It would better prepare us for town meeting if that happened. And I just haven't found the language that will reach people. We can get the word out, but it's not the right words that get people interested and want to come. So just if anybody has any great ideas or examples, I'd love to hear about them.
I'm curious, what is the main arguments? And this maybe it goes to Catherine. You mentioned there's a lot about opposition to solar zoning now, or Sunapee does not have any zoning specific for solar, but their planning board is planning to work on that and bring something to town meeting next year, because a large project did actually get turned down in Sunapee. They have files with the ZBA because they're going to try to get it passed by going to the ZBA and getting exceptions or variance, and then come back to the planning board. But I'm curious as to what the opposition is against the zoning, or what you're experiencing, Lisa.
I think that, and Sarah may be able to speak to this too, the opposition, it was the folks that do not want commercial solar, and they don't want to see their neighbors' solar. They think they're ugly, and they think that they should have special limits. And so when they brought it to the planning board did realize that you really should start with some sort of base for solar zoning, because you can't have a company come in and want to, do 100 acres of solar panels and you have no zoning. So I will defer to maybe Sarah to speak a little bit more, but we did agree with this group that we did want to have some sort of base, but we didn't want the restrictions. They wanted to never see a solar field from any visible point. And they also wanted to limit what you could do in your own property that would be different than, the normal setbacks. They wanted exceptions to the normal rules for putting in a propane tank or whatever. So um, that's why the opposition is happening. It's a group of people that do not want to ever have to look at solar if they can help it.
Yeah, and it's not ideal to be in the situation that Catherine is in because they're having to play some defense. The and I know that Catherine Feb20 is enrolled in this Soul Smart New Hampshire cohort to get some support both from peers and from experts in this to help articulate why solar zoning is helpful. A lot of what Catherine just shared is really it. You don't want to be in a situation where you're having to be reactive. You don't have anything on the books to indicate what rules you'd like folks to play within. And so you're starting from scratch and you've got this big project and the developer showing up at town meeting and people are panicking and getting very defensive and wanting to say no to everything. And in this case, in Sandwich's case, you've got people who are proposing a very restrictive solar zoning ordinance because they're so worked up about it, which would not be good for the community. So the hope is that folks like you getting ahead of it a little bit, having a conversation about what the town would like and what restrictions and allowances make sense in a moment where it's not very heated because there's not a big project that's waiting in the wings that's stressing everyone out. That's the ideal. So I'm glad that Sunapee is going to be involved in this Soul Smart process because that's going to be an excuse to proactively be thinking about it and be preparing. And that's our advice across the board is that we hope communities have a chance to think this through at a moment when there's not a project that the community is stressed about.
In our town, what we had was a homeowner who in a rural district who wanted to put in a 5-acre commercial. They wanted to put in 5 acres of solar, and for a very unique reason to support a special needs child. Okay, so it has a very that's why they want to do it. And because we didn't have any zoning, the planning board did turn around. Now, I don't know. So like I said, I don't know what's going to happen when they go to the ZBA because they have that option. So, but I agree, not having anything on the books really puts everyone at a disadvantage.
And this really, to me, it wasn't an energy committee project. This is planning board work. And we did have a sort of a little committee before we brought it to the greater planning board, 2 members of the planning board, 2 members of the energy committee, and 2 members of the folks that wanted the restrictive zoning, just so we could sit at a table and talk. And then the chair brought it to the planning board, and it was basically out of our hands. He just wanted to hear our viewpoint.
Yeah, and I will say that a theme that I observed heading into the fall and winter were energy committee folks emailing me and saying that they had just caught wind a little late in the process that their planning board was considering solar zoning or conversations like that. Because unless you happen to have a buddy or a partner who's on that other committee, you might not know. And this is something that usually isn't the purview of the planning board. And yet, obviously, we as energy committee members have a pretty big stake in interest in making sure that the zoning is good and that it's happening. So this is a small group, but that's an underscore to make sure that as an energy committee, you feel like you know where the planning board is and that they know to come to you the moment that any of this comes up. You can't assume that will happen.
I I'm sort of going back to one of the topics about how do you reach beyond clean energy regulars, and I've been thinking about this a lot too. Um, I also been involved with a local group, Kearsarge Climate Action, and it's all volunteer. They're really struggling to keep going because after you've been doing it for 10 years and you don't have, it's really hard. And one of the things I ended up having to talk to New Hampshire Healthy Climate Emily Thompson, and their outreach relates to health, public health, personal health, children's health. And one of the things I'm going to suggest to KCA, and if we had an energy group in town, and I may even just try to have what they do is is it called climate cafes? I may not be, but it's a casual, they will host a cafe where you just come and talk about your concern. Now, their focus is about public health and health related, but I'm looking at other ways to engage people that isn't just around energy, maybe about public health, their children, their grandchildren, things like that.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I actually, it's called New Hampshire Healthy Climate, and it's really interesting because it was started by a doctor, and it has grown from local to statewide in maybe 3 years. And now they have a paid staffer.
Mhm.
So, one, it looks to be a very good model for organizational development. I mean, that's the other reason I reached out. I was wondering, how did you become so successful? So, or it appears so successful, and they have different programs that they provide. So, but you can check it out.
I think that's
And I'll just say we had a nurse associated with New Hampshire Healthy Climates come and do one of our talks. Um, and we had a decent turnout for her, but again, it was mostly the people who have already voiced, already said that the climate change is an issue for them. Um, I mean, on the positive side, I should be happy that our town of Nelson, I think I can still say in 2025 that it is a majority of our townspeople who support um, green energy and projects that remediate or try to slow down climate change. So we have passed 3 solar projects over the last 10 years. Um, so I guess I should count my blessings in some ways, um, even as I try to find ways of reaching more of our townspeople.
Something that Katrin has done some work on the Seacoast is in relation to working with libraries and uh, trying to do outreach around just like basic energy access and needs. Specifically, what we did last fall was have these 3 libraries, and we had we were going after a grant. We had a reason to want to do a survey and sort of get to know what residents' concerns are and like level of knowledge and interest in understanding their own energy burden and addressing that. And we had some money to purchase what like DIY weatherization materials to give away at the libraries, and the libraries did some outreach around that. And we, had flyers up around town. The that was very, very well received. Not only the free materials at the library, but they did the library might be a hub for that kind of information. And at least in the survey responses that we got, a lot of interest in very hands-on uh, types of solutions. We were in a slightly more populated area, and so we knew we were tapping into renters as well. But some of the feedback included just sort of lack of awareness that there were things you could do in your own home to help with things like this. It's like a very different angle, but there was more interest than I think we expected from people saying like some of this like really basic nuts and bolts stuff I actually really appreciate and could use more of.
Yeah, I know KCA and is going to try to host 3 button-up workshops this year, and I'm curious if you're finding that those are still being well attended. I mean, I attended one probably 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and they were looking to have one in Sunapee, and I said I would help with that. I'm just curious if anyone is has any feedback on the New Hampshire Saves button-up workshops.
We just did one in Sandwich, and Tamworth did one last year, and I went to that, and it was not very well attended, probably 8 people. I don't know why this one in Sandwich, we had it last month. We had probably 25 people in person and 7 people on Zoom. And so we were really pleased with that. I'm not sure. I mean, Tamworth has a great energy committee, and they did just the same thing we did, advertising. So I don't know what the difference was, but we were really pleased with that. And a lot of people have come to me and told me that they've scheduled audits for their homes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's one of the things KCA or I think is just trying to go where people's interests are or people's concerns are and try to address them and then bring them into the conversation from whatever space they're at.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've definitely done New Hampshire Saves workshops, and, I've definitely learned a lot about them. Um, Again, we mostly got the regulars to come to it. But those workshops are still very good. Those I'm very impressed with the presenters. It seems like useful, actionable information. I do like Sarah's idea, though, of being able to give away some weatherization kits. It's an interesting idea of just free stuff. Um, I I guess I'll mention that our next event, um, beyond past town meeting, but our next event that we're just starting to plan is to roll out some energy coaching in our town. I don't. This has been something that's going on in the Monadnock region through the Monadnock Sustainability Hub. Been focused on Peterborough and Harrisville so far, partly because of some grant funding that those towns received. But we are going to do it in our little town of Nelson too. And I mean, I'm hoping that the message of, here's free help to get you started. And again, we start with weatherization, just like, all of us. That should be the first thing is the energy audit, the weatherization. But then for people who've already moved beyond that, talking about some of the other options. So that'll be the next thing I'll be trying to get the word out about.
That I had read about what's happening in Monadnock region, and so I'm really interested to hear how it goes because that is something I thought, again, KCA may want to pursue, and yeah, it's really interesting. Please keep us posted.
Yeah, we'll do.
One thing we did that I just remembered that might have brought people in, I'm not sure, but the woman that was basically organizing most of the button up had people sign up if they wanted to come early and have pizza. And she had pizza and salad, and almost everybody signed up to come an hour early. So it was sort of a community social thing too.
That sounds really cool.
One other thing to throw out, because this was new to me, if you're familiar at all with the New Hampshire Energy Education Program, they have been very active in New Hampshire in recent years, working with teachers and students, K-12 students mainly, but they have on the Vermont side of the river been experimenting with, and they've developed these two really great workshops. They shared with us the curriculum for adults, one focused on understanding how buildings work from like an energy efficiency standpoint, and another about home electrification. And they have a model that they like over there where they come in with this very hands-on, like really fun. I mean, they're taking some of the stuff they've used with students, but it is just as fascinating. Like experiments with real ice in like a mini fridge that's set up to help you understand how a heat pump works. Very cool, and a different tack on a workshop. But they mentioned that one of the things they'd love to do more of is come in with their like very fun, very different, very hands-on learning, but then partner with a local group that could bring in some local contractors and how, be ready to sort of talk about that. Like, here's how you can take action, and we'll help you with coaching, or we'll help you sign up for an audit, whatever the case might be. It's just fresh take on something like a button-up workshop, which I think I have had feedback that they can feel a little bit stale and difficult to have takeaways from. So that they can't do it for free. They don't have funding for that, but they sort of hinted that they would be happy to partner on a case by case basis. And Katrina and I are certainly out there trying to figure out if we can come up with some funds to help get them on the ground more, because
Yeah.
I think that would be
Yeah,
good.
in Merrimack, with regard to the button-up workshops, first, they must be still popular enough because we asked to do one in town like 2.5 years ago, and they were like, okay, the first opening is in 18 months. And we were like, 18 months? We have to wait 18 months. And we had it, and it was relatively well attended. That was at the library. And then what we followed up with is, I don't really have a marketing background, but from what I've learned in trying to influence people is that I've heard people have to hear a message like 7 times before they take action on it, right? So then we had a workshop specifically on heat pumps. And tonight, our energy committee is actually having a workshop specifically on going solar. So we're sort of trying to slice and dice it up in different ways and keep having these like once a quarter or whatever, just to get different perspectives and to try to get people to come. They have not, after the first button-up workshop, they haven't been that well attended. Like you said, like maybe 8 people or whatever. But we are also getting the community access TV to record them. And what I need to do is go online, and I can see how many views they've had. I haven't done that yet. And hopefully, hopefully it's been more than 1 or 2.
Have all your workshops been in person? Because I gather they also just will do an online
Ours have
presentation.
all been in person so far, which I find very interesting because New Hampshire Network, of course, is like 100% virtual, right? We always meet over Zoom, whereas my energy committee in Merrimack has been very much, no, let's meet in person. So we haven't tried a virtual thing yet.
I mean, I'm because people that have children or work, I'm thinking if it could be a hybrid for us, maybe that would be best, just because getting out, and if you have children, you're really, what do you do? Yeah.
What we did during COVID was we had a very well attended Zoom, because everybody was doing Zoom. We had people who are living in off-grid homes come on, and it was kind of a discussion like this where people could ask questions. It was really open, and it was really fascinating information. And I think that sometimes works for some people, especially people with kids, although unfortunately it still tends to be mostly retired folks that attend these things.
Can I ask, has anybody explored electric school buses?
Go for it.
But what made me think of it was the discussion we had just a little bit ago about Healthy New Hampshire, and pairing that with so how do you get to people? So if you were to explain to people the toxins that come off of an idling diesel-powered school bus and then make the argument to invest in electric school buses. Maybe that would be a way to get to people. It hasn't. I haven't focused on the school district, which is a problem. Maybe it's unique to Londonderry. I don't know. The school and the town don't really get on very well. But I was looking for anybody that had an experience. Did I see you picturing, shaking your head?
Yeah, there's been some towns in the state that have won some grant awards, and they're going to be getting those buses hopefully soon, and that all works out. And they're, it was a bumpy start because the first few buses weren't fabulous, and so it made everyone a little bit shy. But they seem to be doing much better now. They're working really well, and there was a huge amount of funding last year and the years before. I'm not really sure how that's going to go going forward, but yeah, it makes a ton of sense because you're talking about idling, you're talking about having kids, standing there right by all that, just sitting there, breathing that in, and such a difference. I think that's a great idea, and we can still keep, the funding will be different, but we can still keep looking at it and going forward and looking where opportunities might be. Some schools are more excited about having just one or two and seeing how it goes. And then, Sarah, I don't know if you remember the town that signed up for 25 of them. I can't remember who it was.
I don't remember, but I do remember that coming up.
Yeah. So they decided they're going to go full speed ahead and switch all over. So one of the biggest challenges we've had with talking to school districts is their buses are used for sporting events. And so they always say, I don't want to have to deal with not being able to charge. I don't want to have my bus out there and then I can't get it back if it's cold and I hadn't planned on that, or we're there later or whatever. So one of the things that we've really been aware of is that the more that schools start to get chargers in themselves and then can have them available to when people are visiting, the better. So getting kind of a system, because you can't just put use a level 2 charger at the library for a school bus. It has to be a different system. So I think once we start getting off the ground, it'll really start to happen quickly, and it'll be really successful, but slow start.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably far future, and New Hampshire's not the best state for it, right? But I've also seen some articles of school buses with solar panels on top,
Yep.
So it's just like they're self-charging.
Yep. Yeah, they've come so far. It's amazing, the differences. Yeah.
And going back a little bit back to the school bus, a bit of a tangent. I am a former public high school teacher, and I had bus duty morning and night at a central school. So we're talking about a school district that had like 100 buses, and I would have to stand there for 20 minutes, half an hour every morning, and 20 minutes, half an hour every afternoon. And I used this in my testimony for some clean energy things, and I was perfectly healthy. And somehow at the age of 28, I developed asthma.
Interesting. Can't imagine why.
Yeah.
Something to think about too, your police station, your police force and your DPW have opportunities for EVs as well. Sometimes getting one vehicle into a community, just kind of letting that, start is a great way to go. So if anyone's looking at that or sees an opportunity, please let us know. We've been doing a lot of digging in to see what opportunities are out there, what kind of vehicles you can find. So
we had almost a win in Nelson. I guess maybe not last year's town meeting, but I think the year before, there was a warrant article to purchase a new police vehicle, a gas vehicle, and we had quite a discussion both at caucus and at town meeting about whether that should be an electric vehicle or not.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, the will of the town was to stick with the gas vehicle. But after town meeting, the police chief came to several of us and said, I want our next vehicle to be an electric vehicle.
Yeah.
And he was not just being nice. He's not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
So I guess we had said enough to help him to see that it was in his interest to have an EV next time.
Yeah, it's such a difference and such an incredible space, because if you see the police chief driving an EV, it kind of feels, oh well, maybe I could do that too. So it really makes a huge difference in a town to have that one vehicle change. The Chevy Blazer seems to be the most friendly to the police force because it was actually, they have one that's a PV ready, so it's police vehicle. And so you're saving a lot of money, and it's already really thought about things, important things like the width of the seat to fit around the belt, and where things are, the kind of seating in the back and things like that. We're just waiting for those to get out, and I'm not sure what got them slowed down. We have several towns that have put an order in, and they would be driving an EV if they could just get them through. So sometimes it's, there's some piece of the puzzle that has to move in the right direction. But yeah, I think that'll start happening soon. And once they find out how fast an EV can get going, the acceleration, and once they find out how quiet they are and how nice it is to not have the car running all the time, just to have the heat or the electricity on, I don't know why you'd go back. It'll be interesting.
And our Sandwich Energy Committee has, we had a Sandwich Energy Committee from 2008 to 2012, but we reinstated it in 2020. So what we have been trying to do is change the thinking of our, first of all, our selectmen, and then the other departments in town. For example, the first thing we did was the propane furnace in town hall went, and the selectmen didn't even think twice. They're just going to replace it. No discussion about any other type of heat. So that was our first little clue that part of our job would be educating the town. And then they needed a new police cruiser. So we brought up the fact of an EV and that there were EVs available. That must have been 2021. And police chief didn't like the idea. Selectmen were just, didn't have any knowledge about it. So it was a no pretty quickly. And then now we have a new police chief, and what we have to do is we have to pay attention to when these vehicles are going to be coming up for replacement.
Yes.
So we found out 2026, the new chief says it's time to get a new vehicle, and they have the Chevy Blazer regular fossil fuel one, right?
Perfect.
Two of them.
Easy.
So we're gathering information now, and we're going to get with the selectmen and the police chief sooner rather than later, so they have time to think about it. There are now some towns that are not too far away from us, like Wolfboro, who have EVs.
Yep.
So I think we're making slow baby steps, but we are changing the way they think, that it's not just going to be, let's go with the way we've always done things. Now they know we're watching them.
Yeah.
They seem to welcome, because again, they just don't think of alternative things.
And I think that's what we really need to think about right now. I know it can feel a little discouraging with funding and all that kind of stuff, but this is a really great opportunity to plan proactively and to really think about what are those HVAC situations that are about to come up in the next 5 years. Can we start putting things in place? And, you need to put in new police cruisers all the time. So when's the next one? And can we start the year before and talk about it? And, it might not be that you need so much funding when you've really shown how it's going to save the money down the road. But yeah, planning ahead is the best thing possible. Everything moves slowly in government, so get the ball rolling. And if you already have everything signed up and they know exactly what to do, and your public works director already knows, what system they want and where to order it, then when something breaks, they'll fix it with the thing that makes sense. But if it's the power, the heat's out and everyone's freaking out and whatever, they're going to grab whatever is the fastest, easiest, because they want to fix the problem. So you're really right on.
Do you know if anybody's had any luck with the state vehicle buying plan? I don't know what it's called, but that was another objection, was that they buy their vehicles through that.
Yeah, the Chevy Blazer is through that, and they get that big discount that they love so much. And there's some others on there. And we're also working with some EV skid steers and excavators and those kind of things to get those discounts as well. So Bobcat is working with us, and there's a lot of other organizations. So yeah, that's different. It wasn't that way. I mean, when Wolfboro got the Teslas, it was different. I think the F-150, I forgot, in Claremont or somewhere, that was a donation, I think. So this is different. You can start to get those big savings. And
so the state has the Chevy Blazer. What other EVs do they have? Do you know what companies?
I have been chasing down the Chevy Blazer information so much. I don't know of any others that are police vehicle ready. So, but we can find out and look into it.
And how do we find out? I guess we have to go through our town office to know what's on that list of
Yeah.
vehicles available.
Yeah. And Sarah, maybe that's something we could ask for too. Just get the updated list.
We should. Yeah. When you put on your put it on your list, I'll put a note on our team meeting as well.
Perfect.
We'll track it down.
And you'll send
And the road agent would be the other town contact to see what's on their list.
Yeah. And you know what? You can seal that stuff. The CIP and all that, all those things will list out what's coming up. And even if it's 5 years away, you know, if you start talking about it now and it's time to buy that vehicle, right, until this year, we were getting such incredible, like 80% or 90% of the cost of an electric vehicle funded. So it's actually way more affordable to buy an EV than it was to buy a regular vehicle. I'm not sure what will happen with funding going forward, but yeah, you can really start to say, okay, this is a reason to buy it sooner because you're going to start saving money faster, and that makes more sense.
and what
All right, Beth,
fund-
we should put this on our list of future topics. We could
Yeah.
have a whole monthly about this.
Just the whole town EV purchasing.
Yeah, all
as
the
a
different
topic.
places.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Catherine.
yeah.
And also one other point in terms of long-term planning, with some of the electric school buses now have bi-directional charging in their battery
Yeah.
systems available. And so that opens up, yeah, I see you nodding your head about the whole concept of being able to then use on-site solar power generation at the school to charge the battery in the vehicle. And in the summer months, when the vehicle doesn't have other places to go, perhaps it could be running the facility off the solar power using its bidirectional charging. So I think that's an exciting concept as well that presents economics and you know regardless of the where tax credits and things like that go from here, just as kind of from a system standpoint makes a lot of sense. And um, so another way to look at planning kind of for school
Yeah.
Energy.
You can use it as
forecasting
a
going forward.
backup generator as well. So if you have a building that doesn't have
Right.
power for some reason, I know in the last storm, oddly enough, a lot of my town lost power, and all of the gas stations in our town and the next town over were empty. They had no gas to buy, and that's how most people's
Really?
generators are run. So
Wow.
having that bidirectional is really nice.
The other issue, I think it is a good idea to do this whole EV thing, but our policemen take their cruisers home.
Mhm.
So how do they
So-
charge them, you know?
There's a couple of easy things you can do. First of all, they could do it while they're, you know, if they have them while they're at work and they're not running. A lot of our police officers are in the vehicles for part of the day, and the rest of the day they're there, so you can charge them. You know, you could go really expensive and go for a level 3, and then they could charge quickly in 20 to 30 minutes and be ready. Also, you could have some sort of a stipend. You know, it's about $1,000 to install it in your home, level 2 charger. You come home, they plug it in, and then there would be some amount of money that would just be figured out that they would, you know, you can do the math. How much energy did we use? How much did you have to replace? Wouldn't be that hard. So if they're taking them home anyway, we have 2 chargers in our garage. I'm pretty happy to have those, and they're really easy.
It's a very good question though, because it's also true for some school bus drivers, and particularly in rural areas that take their buses home
Mhm.
as well. So that issue runs the
Yeah.
gamut.
A bus charger is a little more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little more infrastructure needed.
We only have a few minutes left, and one of the topics was, to get back to strategies to encourage the adoption of a warrant article for community power. And only just 12 minutes ago, I remembered. Last year, Merrimack worked with 350 New Hampshire. 350 New Hampshire got a grant from somewhere to help with printed materials to promote community power. So we got 50 yard signs for free from 350 New Hampshire. And I just pinged Jennifer Doobie, and she said, yes, they still have some money for that, but it has to be done ASAP. They go through Keystone Press, and I think it's not just yard signs, but maybe flyers. But I put Jennifer's email in the chat here, Jennifer at 350newhampshire.org. If you guys are doing, if Community Power is coming up for a vote, contact her and she can let you know what the available things might be, yard signs, flyers, whatever.
Speaking of community power, maybe Sarah, can you give us a update on what's going on with the community power program that Revisions is doing with, I think, in Jaffrey?
I think I
It's
can
not
speak to
it's
that.
not community power. It's a
Yeah.
I mean
It's a
it's
community
not
It's called
solar.
community power.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's confusing.
Yeah. And
I haven't had an update from them in a long
dead.
time. Maybe you know more than
It
I
is
do.
it's dead. It's
Okay.
completely dead.
Oh, wow. I didn't
Oh,
realize.
okay.
And I say that as somebody who invested in it and they
Okay.
gave me my money back. Um,
Wow.
so, and it's basically because of Eversource, they increased the interconnect fees by so much that there was not a way to make the project financially feasible. So it was killed sometime, I think, in the last. When was the local energy solutions fair?
That was back in November,
Yeah,
the
November. So
1st of November.
it was between then and now. I mean, and it was
Oh,
actually it was before the end of last year. So probably in December it got killed. It's just terrible. It was the perfect site for it. Yeah.
hmm.
As we're ending here, just one thought on why there's so few of us today. Um, I kept looking for an email with the link because every other meeting I've gotten from, I think it's Susan Raymond, sends out one a couple days before, the day of. I mean, yes, we shouldn't be that lazy, but I had to go on to the New Hampshire network to get the link. And maybe people forgot. And without those, I mean, she did do multiple reminders, which we shouldn't need, but we do.
Makes
All
sense.
right. I have at the top of the hour, so if you have to go to other things, please feel free to drop. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who does. I can hang out a few more minutes if we have some more conversation. Otherwise, we will bid you all a good afternoon and see you on the third Thursday at 3 in March. And I've made a note of potential more conversation about, getting electric vehicles for your town, whether it's police cars or buses or other things, and who would be the person driving it, et cetera, as a possible discussion. And if anybody's having town meeting between now and then, good luck.
You're here.
Okay,
Thank you.
Bye.
have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.
You too.